Well, the search for BRIAN Laundrie leads now to the discovery of apparent human remains. They haven't been confirmed to be his yet, but it is leading to new twists in this case. Attorney Wendy Patrick joining us now with the latest. Wendy, good morning.
Good morning, Raul.
The twists never seem to stop it. It's unbelievable, right?
It has been unbelievable, and I'll tell you, this latest discovery is so noteworthy because remember, this fugitive search has been going on for over a month.
Yeah.
They have combed this reserve, 25,000 acres. They've used divers, dogs, drones, every conceivable way of finding information. They open the reserve to the public, and the very next day, the parents of all people lead the authorities to not only the remains, but also some property belonging to their son.
And the parents led them right to it. Did they not do this before because it was closed? Or why didn't this happen earlier? They seem to know exactly the spot.
And that's what they said. They knew this trail was one that their son liked to hike, but this area had been underwater, Raul. So they wouldn't have found anything,
right.
Although they did search. You know, they did use divers. But you would think this would be a needle in a haystack. But those parents had home court advantage. They knew this place. They knew their son. They knew where he liked to hike. And they told the FBI and the authorities, look, we're going to do this tomorrow morning. They met up with them, and wouldn't you know it, shortly thereafter, they found a notebook. Boy, we can't wait to hear what's in that. A backpack and partial remains. There's no indication they found a body. Partial remains. So obviously there's more work there to be done.
The family attorney, and this is just this morning, said that there is, quote, a strong probability that those are his remains. This is from the family attorney. If that proves to be the case, what then? What does that tell us? I mean, obviously that he went off, as a lot of people assumed, and perhaps he took his own life, perhaps something, I don't know.
Yeah, what's interesting about that question is obviously the attorney knows nothing more than we do.
Right.
There's no inside information, but they're probably just looking at the proximity, looking at Brian's belongings, and then looking at where the remains, partial remains, were found. What happens now is the resources will be focused on coming up with a timeline, coming up with answers, seeking to provide closure to Gabby's family and really to the rest of the nation that weighed in.
Because at this point, it's about closure. If hypothetically speaking, if he did take his own life and they're both gone now, it's about closure for the families.
It's about closure to the families and finding answers.
Yeah.
You know, they want to know, and everybody wants to know why.
Why?
You know, there's always going to be the why. There's always going to be those answers. So while neither Brian or Gabby can actually tell us what happened, forensically, we may be able to put together much more than we think.
What does this mean for Gabby's family? Because they're in New York and they're watching this happening in Florida, and Brian's family obviously there. But for Gabby's family, we mentioned closure, but is there any kind of any other sentiments happening with the fact that, oh, there he is?
I would think Gabby's family would like to continue to find out what Brian's family knew and when. So it's going to be more focus on the family. However, remember that they didn't speak with law enforcement shortly thereafter. And they also did speak with law enforcement before they went searching. So they were very transparent and open and actually said, look, this is where our son liked to hike. Yeah. So in the balance, you hope that those families get an opportunity to talk.
How long does it take normally to identify remains? Because I think the challenge lies in, well, how long have they been there and under what conditions? And in those swampy areas of Florida, and it was underwater, does it make it more challenging?
Yeah, you know, I think you just answered the question. All the factors you cited are exactly what complicates this analysis. It's not as easy as, oh, well, there's a skull, so we'll look at the teeth. We don't even know what partial remains were, except that we do have an indication that they will be identifiable, so we're all going to wait and see.
It's, you know, you kind of touched on this earlier, but it's a fascinating topic of whether or not the parents will be charged and what their role was, because ironically enough, we're talking about the Kristen Smart case earlier this morning.
So many cases.
The person accused in that, and then the father helped them, and it's like parents and helping their children when they commit just an atrocity and a horrible crime. Is this something potentially that we could be looking at here?
Well, what the authorities will probably look at is, did they do anything to actively assist their son? Did they actively cover something up? Did they lie to the authorities? Now, normally that's sort of a default charge if there's not a lot of evidence for the others, but they didn't speak to the authorities shortly afterwards. Remember that and when they did, it was broad sweeping statements. There wasn't really any particulars, but all of those will be now analyzed with whatever new evidence this remains can tell us. And what is in that notebook? Like you said, is it a suicide note? Is it chronicling the journey? I mean, normally you go into the wilderness, you take food, water, but a notebook, that'll be very telling.
A lot of information there. And,
That's right.
You realize they lawyered up pretty quickly. right? So it's like, well, what was that all about?
Yeah, I don't know how unusual it is for people to seek legal advice when they have a family member that is suspected of a homicide. However, that no doubt will complicate the, what did they knew when, and what did they also do to make sure they didn't speak out? I mean, because they didn't say anything.
They sure didn't.
Zero.
And silence speaks volumes sometimes.
Sometimes
is what
it
people
does.
say.
Right.
It captivated the whole country, the whole world. So we'll see what develops from there. Wendy Patrick, as always, thank you.
Thank you.